Today's Mercedes-Benz interview of the day brought to you by the utterly inspired all-electric EQE sedan from Mercedes-Benz. Hundreds of customizable comfort settings inside the cabin. It's the EV that recharges you, the vehicle all-electric, the feeling all Mercedes. Learn more at MBUSA.com/EQE. Matt Leinart, Jerry Ferrara, co-hosts of the new podcast. It's called Throwbacks. It's a weekly podcast from Sinclair, and they are sharing stories about, leading up to how one became a star in TV, one became a star in football. They talk about family life. It's available on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the podcast platforms. All right, guys, let me ask you the poll question here. Seaton, give Matt and Jerry the poll question.
Yeah, the poll question is, who enjoys Los Angeles more, the starting quarterback for USC or an actor on a hit TV show?
Okay. Matt, I'll start with you.
I saw this poll question, guys, on X, and I started laughing. Thought it was fantastic. Listen, I got to be honest with you. Being a quarterback in LA when USC was the only real football team definitely had its perks, guys. It definitely had its perks.
It did.
It did. And I will say this before Jerry answers. I did act a little bit back in the day. My first acting role was on Judging Amy as an extra. Okay. Judging Amy as an extra. I didn't get paid money, so it wasn't illegal back then. Okay. So I kind of had the best of both worlds. Now, I don't know if Jerry's ever thrown a football in a real football game, but I'll let him answer. I think I win. I'm going to say that, though.
Okay, but Jerry, you were in Entourage, and I think you guys might have overlapped. Was Entourage just starting when you were leaving USC? I think around 04, 05 was your last year, Matt. Does that sound right?
Yeah, 05.
Okay.
Yeah, 05.
So, Jerry, how big was Entourage, you guys, when you went out in Los Angeles? Did you own Los Angeles when you were filming?
Look, this question made me nervous for some reason. I don't know why. I feel like I'm going to screw it up.
Statute of limitations is over, so don't worry about that.
All that being said, look, it is hard not to say you want to be the quarterback on one of the most iconic college football teams of all time. I'm going to go with that as my answer. However, I had no injury risks. I never had to travel outside of LA. I was over 21. Not that Matt probably had any problems getting into clubs back then, but I could go out, have some pops, So it was a pretty great run. And that's what I think makes Matt and I such a fun pairing is we could have easily been running around together back then. And now you cut to 20 years later as some fathers and basically in a whole new chapter. Here we are.
Well, what was the interaction prior to starting this podcast? How well did you guys know each other?
I had never met Matt. Obviously, I know a lot about Matt, but I never met the guy before. But, the minute his name came up for me, I said, oh, there's so much fun overlap. I'm New York. He's LA. We both lived in LA. We both have kids that are very young at this point. So, and the minute we talked, it was, we went on like a podcast blind date and we hit it off. He wanted to see me again. And here we are. We're now one episode in.
What made you want to do a podcast, Matt?
It's a good question, Dan. I've always, there's the world of podcasting, right? I feel like everybody has one. And I really wanted to wait until the opportunity, just like the perfect opportunity. And for me, it was always like, I really want to do it with somebody. And I didn't know who that was. And then when Jerry's name kind of came up, I was like, dude, Turtle from Entourage. And to Jerry's point, like I hung with Connolly a little bit, one of Jerry's boys. Like that was the only guy from that show that I had an acquaintance with. But when they said Jerry, I was like, dude, I know he's a diehard sports fan. Great, just a great dude, kind of like a guy's guy. And then in the similar situation, me with just little kids and married and just like going through the chaos of life, I like, okay, this could really work. And we talked on the phone. Our bromance started right away. I think we talked for like an hour on the phone, just like trying to get to know each other, but it was super normal and super easy. And it's just been like that ever since. And we're just going to have a lot of fun. I think it's going to be very relatable. I'm kind of come from the athlete perspective. He comes from the fan perspective, but he's probably more knowledgeable about sports than a lot of athletes are, obviously just with his love for sports in general. So it's a really fun, I think, going to be a fun listen, having great guests on and just talking, man. Like and we're in the trenches in everyday life. The reason why, Jerry, you were nervous about this is because your wife is listening, and if you say anything stupid, it's going to come back to get you. And by the way, I'm the same way. I'm married to a Cuban lawyer. We have to be very, very careful what we say on this podcast.
True.
But you're bringing that New York fan, Jerry, and you guys can be annoying, obnoxious. Been tough times for New York sports fans here recently.
Yes, but we have the Knicks, which is all I really care about at this point. I can't get too mad at the Giants, even though it might be a long year, but they've given me so much joy beating the Pats and the Yankees, obviously, all those years. Yeah, I'm so locked in on the Knicks. But you know what? Matt mentioned I can't throw a football. He's right. But Dan, I hope you remember.
Oh, I do.
So Matt, when we do the show, has his Heisman right near him. I brought this out for you, Dan, my beach ball MVP award. Matt, Dan presented me with this because Dan was calling the game in 2011. He presented me with my only athletic achievement on camera ever.
He was so competitive.
I'm sure.
Now, understand, he's going against supermodels.
Yeah.
There were Meghan Markle was playing defensive back against
True,
Jerry.
I lit her up.
Yes, you did. You did light her up. But you were like a Julian Edelman type. And, oh, my God, when the game ended, you would have thought he won the Super Bowl. You would have thought he won an Academy Award. He's like,
is that the proudest thing on your resume, Jerry?
It's up
you're
there.
Going with that?
Getting to sit courtside at the Knicks game is number one, and this might be number two. And Dan, who I know for a long time and love, I think I teared up when I walked away when he gave me the trophy. I think I had like a lone tear running down my face. So.
Yes, yeah. I think you said, I feel like Vince Young beating USC. I think that's what you said. Was that a direct quote?
That is not a direct quote. No, I would not say that. And I'm already getting defensive of my boy here.
Gosh, I was at Texas. We have Michigan, Texas this weekend, and I was at Texas a couple weeks ago. Sat down with Quinn Ewers, and I tell you what, guys, like it's almost 20 years removed. Incredible game. We it's obviously I think one of the best games of all time in college football, if not the best. And I just still, I can't escape Vince Young, like the nightmare. So Dan, I appreciate you, bringing that up because I will deal with it tomorrow. There'll be a fan on set, and they'll be like, "Hey, I was at the 06 Rose Bowl. Vince Young really got his knee was down, huh?" Wink, wink. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, guys, can we just stop with this game?"
The podcast is called Throwbacks. It's a weekly new podcast with Matt Leinart and Jerry Ferrara. Now, you guys dealt with highs here. Matt, national championship and a Heisman. Then your football career ends. Jerry, you had Entourage. Then Entourage ends. Now, you've had other acting gigs. But dealing with that high, but then you go to that phone's not ringing as much. People aren't as interested in. Have you guys, is that something that would be explored on the podcast of everybody talks about the highs. It's the lows where you really find out about yourself.
For me, yeah, it's actually something that I have queued up for next week's episode. Because I do want to tell this story. And yeah, it does involve going back, even if you go back like right before COVID and then what that did to the business for me. And then I turned down a job, which at the time I was getting job offers. I just didn't want to do this show. Cut to, they did 98 episodes. So basically I'd be retired at this point.
What was the show?
You dropped the ball.
I'm gonna save it. I'm gonna hold it for us, DP.
Okay. That's good hosting.
All I'll say is I would have had to move to Hawaii, which sounds like a bad thing or a great thing. I looked at it like I don't want to be in Hawaii for 7 years. So yeah, I'm gonna talk about all that stuff. I always say with LA too. LA is an amazing place to live, and when you're high, it's just the best place ever. I've experienced it. When the phone does stop ringing and maybe you're not invited to the coolest party in the world, it could be a very lonely place. And this is before family and stuff. So I'm going to talk about everything.
And speaking of high, I do have Jerry's bong from Entourage.
That's right.
Like game used bong that I have back here that he signed. And signed it as Turtle. And you said, I never sign anything as Turtle, but you signed the bong as Turtle. So,
well, I figured you've done more movies than I have, so I figured like I owed it to you. This Dan's IMDb page is longer than mine.
So, Matt, when the phone stops ringing, when you're no longer a quarterback, how did you process that?
Well, the last time, this is a funny story. The last time the phone rang for me, Dan, I was on an elliptical in 24-hour fitness, and Buffalo Bills called me, and I had that terrible last game. I was already checked out, but that was the last time the phone rang. And, for me, I was already done. I didn't have the luxury of retiring on my own, or like this is going to be my last year. Like it just ended. And there was a big sense of relief, I think, because I was just injuries, mental, like I was just ready to move on. But then time passes and you're like, well, like who am I? Especially as an athlete, I think we always go through like your identity, right? When you're done, it's like, am I a football player? Am I this? Who am I? What's next? What's the next step? Fortunately, I was able to get into Fox right away and do the job and grow into what we are in Big Noon Kickoff, which is the best. And I love my job. But it was challenging. And I think this pod is going to cover just everything. Like Jerry and I think our number one goal is like, we just want to be like authentic to ourselves, authentic to who's listening, relatable. Like just because I was an NFL player doesn't mean like I had this luxurious life. So I went through a lot of hell, personal things, like, just a lot of stuff that I dealt with that was really, really challenging. So I think to your point, nothing's off limits. Like we're just kind of like two guys going through life with kids, and we love sports, and we've had, like you said, the ups were great, but then there's also a lot of downs, and how do you kind of go through that? So we'll cover all of that. I think we'll cover all that. We'll have a lot of guests on too that will probably be able to tell their story as well, which is really cool.
Closer to winning a championship, USC football or the Knicks?
Ooh,
I know my answer, but I'll let you. I know my answer.
Who did the Knicks pick up this offseason? Did you guys get anybody?
Mikal Bridges,
Mikal
the Nova
Bridges.
Knicks, strong, and they resign. Yes, we're running it back with Bridges, the new addition.
I would probably say the Knicks. Look, my Trojans looked good last week. They looked good last week, but we are a long ways away from winning the national championship. I think we're a couple years away, but I have faith we're moving the right direction. The Knicks had a run. And really quick, Dan, I watched the Knicks playoff game with Jerry last year. And by the way, I almost had a heart attack watching him watch his Knicks play. By the way, they were up by like, I don't even know. They were up by, say, 15 at some point or 10. I'm like, oh, this game's in the bag. He's like, it's not over. I've seen this really many times. I'm like, bro, you are psychotic, dude. Like, it's okay. Like, literally, he was watching like this the whole time. Like, didn't move. I'm like, that's a true story. I was like, you're insane, dude. I don't know how you guys do this.
So, Jerry,
they won.
You'd concur the Knicks are closer to a championship, obviously.
I think so. I do. The expanded playoff system in college. Who knows? Maybe you get Cinderella stories, which I think is going to be really cool this year. No longer do you lose like a game or two and your season's kind of over. But yeah, I think the Knicks are close. It's not great that they're in the East with the Celtics, who are a beast. But I'm ready for some football. But man, am I ready for some basketball too?
Matt, we were in a movie together.
So was it House Bunny?
Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
Now
Great.
I wasn't in a scene with you. I was an officer who arrests Anna Faris. Sandler always put me in a police uniform. He thought that was so funny that I'd have a mustache and I was a police officer. But you played you. I played a police officer. Anna Faris.
By the way, some of our best work, Dan. That's some of our best work.
They're still talking about that. They're still.
I was with Sean Salisbury. I was in the scene with Sean Salisbury, and Anna was in it. And actually, this is a true story. So that day we shot at the mansion, and everyone was like, "Oh, the mansion." I'm like, "No, we were like shooting a scene, whatever in the pool. It's a pool party scene." And I brought my. This is gonna sound bad. I brought my young Cole, who's 17. My mom came, and Cole was probably 2. I don't know. That was like 2007 or 6, or I was right out of college. And Demi Moore was Demi Moore's. I think was it Rumor who was in it. One of her daughters was in it. And Demi Moore was sitting with my mom on like the front lawn babysitting Cole while we were shooting the scene. It's a true story. It was awesome. I'm like, what is my life right now? I'm in a Sandler movie. By the way, shirtless. I'm like, dude, I do not want to be shirtless in this movie. I actually still randomly get texts because the movie is good. Like it still plays, and I still still get texts every once in a while from it. So I'm proud of that work.
But did you go to the Playboy Mansion when you were at USC?
Not even close. Never even stepped foot in it outside of that. So
Did
people
Jerry?
ask me that.
Did Jerry?
I'm
You
sure
go?
Jerry did.
I've been to the mansion quite a few times. I'm not gonna lie. I still have some pajamas that I just don't have the heart to throw away because I have some good memories going. Yes, and we shot an episode of Entourage
That's
there
true.
as well. But
Yeah.
shooting there is a little different than going to old school half party. That's for sure.
I-
Yeah, I've been a handful of times.
It's weird to say this, but it was depressing when I went to the Playboy Mansion because the interior is stuck in the 70s.
True.
And like I remember I had Drew Carey and Ron Jeremy talking to me. I mean, how many times do you start a story like that? So I got Drew Carey and Ron Jeremy asking me sports questions. They had all of the waitresses were playmates with paint. They didn't have clothes on. They had paint on their body. And then Hef came down with 3 playmates, and they were trying to prop him up and have him dance a little bit. And I don't know. It didn't have what I thought it was going to have, I guess.
I think you got to been around going there in like the 70s. I think if you wanted to really get the full experience,
I was a nobody in the 70s. I couldn't have gotten in unless
I'm just picturing you and Ron Jeremy talking sports. Then sorry.
We were going to do a podcast together, but just letting you know, throwbacks. Hey, good luck with the podcast. And so it comes out weekly. It's available on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Sinclair is the one putting this out. Throwbacks, Matt Leinart, Jerry Ferrara. Thank you, guys. Always great to talk to you. Appreciate it. Have fun up there in Michigan, Matt.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for having us, man. Appreciate you, buddy.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you. Good to see you.
See you, buddy. All right, we'll take a break. Last call for phone calls, what we learn, what's in store for Monday after this.